Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the Sterling Heights City Council to order. Please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear God, please bless our elected officials. Grant them courage and wisdom to do what is right for all citizens. Amen.
Amen.
Ms. Riska, can we please have the roll call?
Mayor Taylor?
Here.
Mrs. Raski?
Here.
Raski?
Present.
Mr. Radke?
Present.
Mrs. Schmidt?
Present.
Mr. Yanez?
Here.
And Mrs. Yerga?
Present.
Thank you, Council. We need approval of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Koski.
move to approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? No discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. First item tonight is a report from our city manager, Mark Vanderpool. Mr. Vanderpool.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to begin by reminding everyone of an important event coming up on January 18th, which is a session about all you need to know about voting. With the presidential election coming up in 2024, not to mention the presidential primary on February 24th, we thought it'd be really good to have this session to inform you about all the legislative changes, early voting, and the like. So this will be on January 18th at the Sterling Heights Community Center, just across the street in Community 1. And you can certainly visit our website for more information or call 446-CITY for more information. But we look forward to seeing you on January 18th. There'll be a lot of information coming out on social media, different media platforms over the next few weeks. But look forward to this session on January 18th. And thinking of warmer, sunny weather, Sterling Fest is really not that far around the corner, believe it or not. We're looking forward to it. We're already hard at work planning the 2024 Sterling Fest. But before we get there, we have an exciting presentation this evening. And before I introduce our Community Relations Director, I wanted to give just a brief overview of Sterling Fest, more of a financial overview. And you're probably not as excited as I am about this type of presentation, but I want to talk about Sterling Fest some financially speaking. So it's a complicated endeavor. It involves hundreds of people, and it is rather complex financially speaking. Sterling Fest, for example, the budget is just over $600,000 to put on Sterling Fest every year. Now, this has increased some from our peak year in 2008, which proved to be our most costly Sterling Fest. Our total expenditures in 2008 was just under $500,000. Now we're at just over $600,000. But the important number is this, and that's our total net cost. In 2008, or 16 years ago, our total net cost to put on Sterling Fest was $270,000. This last Sterling Fest, it was $227,000. So it's actually gone down, our net cost. That's the most important factor, is our net cost. Now, you may be wondering, how in the world can your net cost be going down in light of inflation and increased wages and increased entertainment costs and so on and so forth? We've been working really hard to reimagine, refresh, update, and do all that we can to make Sterling Fest more efficient, more cost effective. And that includes generating more revenue. Sterling Fest now generates over $400,000 in revenue. And that comes by way of the pavilion, the Suds and Sounds Pavilion, the carnival, our corporate donations. We had our best year ever last year for corporate donations, thanks to our community relations team and their good work. Almost $140,000 in corporate donations for Sterling Fest. And we generate fees from the artists and food vendors and the like. So over $400,000 in revenue, a record year, which again brings down the net costs. We've also worked hard to reduce our overtime costs required for Sterling Fest, just by way of setup and takedown just more efficient now. And our overtime costs have actually gone down slightly since 2008. When you spread that out over per capita, it equates to about $1.70 per capita in Sterling Heights to have Sterling Fest. Because almost 150,000 people come to Sterling Fest. They're not all Sterling Heights residents, but the vast majority certainly are. $1.70 per capita. Think about the parties you may have, a graduation, a wedding, $1.70 per capita, not going to happen. So I raise this mainly because of our excellent partnership with Connect Macomb over the years, making Sterling Fest possible. We've worked very closely with the Chamber, who provides us 125 volunteers to actually help run Sterling Fest. We don't pay a penny for those volunteers. If you were to equate that to just a nominal part-time fee, be tens of thousands of dollars for those volunteers. So we're very fortunate to have this relationship and a revenue sharing arrangement with the Chamber that generates, in our case, Sterling Heights, about $146,000 in revenue sharing, and the Chamber gets approximately $66,000. So a little bit less, but it's also one of their largest fundraisers. So this is win-win for so many parties. Not only our corporate donors who love Sterling Fest, want to be a part of it and contribute to Sterling Fest, but to Connect Macomb, our Chamber, who does a great job, but also they earn some revenue off Sterling Fest. And most importantly, all of those that attend this incredible event every year that has become a point of pride for not only our city, but also creating a destination place for those who want to visit Sterling Heights for this great event. So this evening, we have a special presentation to present a significant check to the city. And to do that, I'd like to introduce our Community Relations Director, Melanie Davis, who works very closely on this partnership, she and her team, and is also responsible for making Sterling Heights the success it is, including our Parks and Recreation Director, Kyle Langlois. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderpool, Mayor Taylor, members of council, Mr. Kajubski. As you all know, we are in about our 45th year of Sterling Fest. We've been at it for almost 5 decades, and in just a few years, we're going to be really excited to host our 50th anniversary for Sterling Fest. And for the majority of those years, we've had enjoyed a really wonderful partnership with our local Chamber of Commerce, now known as Connect Macomb. What they do for us every year, the time and effort that they put in is incredible. Like Mark mentioned, they work to get dozens and dozens and dozens of volunteers for that beer pavilion and the satellite beer pavilion, or the satellite beer tents. And they also help us interface with the carnival. They just do a tremendous amount of work for us, and we are so very grateful for them. And tonight, to present us with the fund sharing from that partnership is Connect Macomb's President and CEO, Stacy Ziarko. So I'd like to welcome her up at this time to say a few words.
Well, Happy New Year. Thank you for allowing us to be here tonight. And more importantly, thank you for allowing us to continue the partnership with Sterling Fest. As everyone has stated, we love being a part of the festival. Our team, works each year to make it better and a little bit more efficient within the beer tent, within the carnival. And so we look forward to many more years of partnering with all of you. I think, and I know the mayor says this all the time, it is one of the best weekends of the summer. We all think that it is as well. And so we are grateful for the continued relationship we have with the city of Sterling Heights. Our members love it. They look forward to it. We have already had people ask us if they can sign up to volunteer already. So July will be here before we know it. But tonight we're here to present a check to the city. We kind of mailed it to you at the end of last year as our fiscal year ended on December 31st. But we're here today for $178,766 on behalf of Connect Macomb to the city of Sterling Heights, as Mark mentioned, about our revenue sharing agreement, and we're grateful that we get to be a part of this every year. So if we could make the snowy weather today go away, and this gives us a chance to think about some sunshine. But thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you in July.
Awesome.
Thank you very much, Mayor. We'll be sharing more details about the 2024 Sterling Fest in just a few months. And in recognition of the Martin Luther King Jr. Day, city offices will be closed for business on Monday, January 15th. So please take note of that. That's Monday, January 15th. And also, please be reminded that residents can continue to recycle their Christmas trees. Simply have to set them out at the curb on your normal collection day, and that will run through February 2nd. And lastly, at the conclusion of tonight's meeting, I'm requesting the City Council convene a closed session pursuant to Sections 8C and 8E of the Open Meetings Act to discuss strategy in connection with collective bargaining and also to discuss trial or settlement strategy in connection with Macomb County Circuit Court case number 2023-2799-CE. And Mayor, that concludes my report this evening. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Vanderpool, and we certainly are already looking forward to Sterling Fest 2024. Next item on our agenda tonight, this is an ordinance introduction. This is to consider introduction of an ordinance amending Article 6, Section 6.05, and Article 7, Section 7.05 of zoning ordinance number 278 to eliminate the parking space requirements for boats, trailers, and recreational vehicles in RM1 and RM2 multiple family low-rise districts and RM3 multiple family mid and high-rise districts. We have a presentation from our city planner and city development manager, Dr. Jake Parcell. Dr. Jake.
Thank you very much, Mayor Taylor, Mr. Vanderpool, Mr. Koszewski, members of council. 2 slides tonight, so I will be brief. But as Mr. Mayor stated, we have a small amendment here to the city's zoning ordinance, essentially eliminating parking space requirements for recreational vehicles, boats, and trailers in all of our multifamily districts. This is 2 different districts, RM1 and RM2 are in one district, RM3 is in another. Throughout most of the multifamily developments we've seen, developers are petitioning relief from this through a modification. It's antithetical to the city's hardscaping requirements and for our associated stormwater runoff and sustainability goals. And also, as you'll see in a moment, it's incredibly burdensome from a space perspective to put in some of these developments. So if adopted by City Council, the multifamily, low-rise, and the mid to high-rise districts will be relieved from the following requirements. The provision requiring that there be a minimum of 10-foot by 25-foot parking space with storage for storage of boats, trailers, and RVs. A provision that one of these is for every 10 dwelling units, and they must be fenced, locked, secured, and visually buffered. The parking spaces for these shall be collective and in a central location, and that recreational vehicles cannot be parked or stored closer to 30 feet to any building or 100 feet within any site boundary lines. So these are incredibly restrictive, incredibly cost-intensive for developers, and we are asking for adoption of an ordinance that helps us remove this from the zoning ordinance. And I'm open for questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Parcell. At this time, I'll go to the audience. Is there anyone who'd like to speak on this item? If not, council, we need a motion.
Mayor Taylor?
Mrs. Strowski.
Resolved to introduce the ordinance amending Article 6, Section 6.05 and Article 7, Section 7.05 of the zoning ordinance number 278 to eliminate the parking space requirements for boats, trailers, and recreational vehicles in RM-1 and RM-2 multiple family low-rise districts and RM-3 multiple family mid and high-rise districts.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Any discussion, Mrs. Strowski?
Just very briefly, makes good sense. We have been dealing with this for multiple years. We have not had anyone really want this in any of their new buildings and areas that they're putting through, so I am happy to get this off of our requirements.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Radke.
Yes, briefly, Mr. Mayor. I completely agree with the Mayor Pro Tem. I asked for this to be brought forward because in the 6.5 years or 6 and a little bit more I've been on council, we've never once granted this. And we've been eliminating it administratively and through modification ever since then. I don't know of one developer who wants it, so it's just kind of clean out the cobwebs and kind of make it a little bit easier for people to do business in Sterling Heights. So I'm all in favor of this. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Council, anyone else? No further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is an ordinance adoption, and this is to consider adoption of a map amendment to zoning ordinance number 278 to conventionally rezone property commonly known as 8850 Hall Road, situated on the southwest corner of the intersection with Brockton Avenue from O2 Planned Office District to R80 One Family Residential District, case number PZ 23-0009. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this item? If not, council, we need a motion.
Mayor Taylor,
Mrs. Schmidt.
resolve to adopt the map amendment to zoning ordinance number 278 to conventionally rezone property commonly known as 8850 Hall Road and situated on the southwest corner of the intersection of Brockton Avenue from O2 Planned Office District to R80 One Family Residential District, case number EZ 23-0009.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion, Mrs. Schmidt?
No, I think this was covered, and it's really a down zoning, so I think it's, I have no issues.
Council, anyone else? No further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Dr. Jake. Appreciate it. Next up is the consent agenda. Anyone, would anyone like to speak on any item on tonight's consent agenda? Council, we need a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Koski?
move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Been moved and supported with no discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next up is communications from citizens. Is there anyone who'd like to speak on anything not on tonight's agenda? Okay, we'll move on to reports from city administration. Mr. Vanderpool, any responses to anything tonight? Can't imagine what that would be.
No, Mayor, unless you want me to respond.
No, you perfectly
you.
fine. Mr. Koszybski, the two items tonight?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay. Council, anyone else? Any reports or new business, unfinished business?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Yanis.
I have a couple of things. One, first of all, I would like to point out, without trying to embarrass her, that our own Melanie Riska appeared on the MERS Monday podcast, representing her peers of clerks across the state of Michigan. I just want to report, if nobody heard the podcast, she did an excellent job. It was a very long interview, which are very tough to do sometimes, but she represented her peers and the city very well, and I look forward to her presentation coming up later this month on our new voting laws. Yay. Also, I just want to say, the way our meeting ended, the last meeting was uncomfortable, to say the least. And that just leads me to the thought of our PUD ordinance just isn't working. We talked about this last year at strategic planning. We had planning in the same room with us. We talked about how we need to get on the same page, and yet, once again, we're not. I just don't feel that this ordinance is working well for us, for the city as a whole, and I think we really need to take a deep dive back into the PUD and review what we're doing, or what we're trying to do with that law, and try to do things better. It was very unfortunate what happened at the meeting last meeting, and I feel very bad for the builder, the developer. I don't think that we're chasing any builders or developers away. But anyways, I feel very strongly, and hopefully colleagues, you'll agree with me, and maybe at the next strategic planning, we can start having this conversation again with PUDs. And then last but not least, I do have some questions in regards, I guess maybe city manager is probably best to ask these questions through, but I saw that there was a notice from HR that our new social worker, Stacy Reed, started, which is great news for us because we have so much work for our social worker and so much need for our social worker. And I'm looking forward to having our second social worker start to help with some of that workload. But I noticed that she had already started working with the city as a community resource liaison. She started, I guess, in November or October. And I came to find out that that job, the community resource liaison, was created through a letter of understanding, which even though I've been involved in the union for many, many years, I'm really quite unfamiliar with. So can somebody explain to me what the difference is between a letter of understanding and a memo of understanding? And I'll throw that as city manager or attorney, either or.
Mr. Vanderpool?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Councilman Yanez, I'd be happy to respond. First, we did send out background material to the city council on the position and provided some background. But essentially, a memorandum of understanding is more formal and is technically an amendment or an appendix to a collective bargaining agreement. And those always require city council approval. A letter of understanding is just that. It's a letter of understanding less formal than an MOU, just outlining some informal understandings between the city management and the union. So it's not formal negotiations, if you will, and LOUs do not require formal approval. But if the city attorney would like to elaborate, he could, but if you're interested in something more specific, perhaps I could elaborate.
Well, I would like a copy of the background material that you sent to city council. I did try to find something through our packets, and I couldn't find anything specific, but I could have just overlooked it, but I'd certainly like to see that. I don't know if the city attorney would like to chime in at all. I'm giving you the option so you can bail if this is uncomfortable for
Well,
you.
no, I appreciate that. I'm not involved in the labor side of negotiating those things, but what Mr. Vanderpool said is accurate as to what the differences are between a LOU and an MOU.
Okay, and so this position that was created, was it posted? Was there an internal and external posting to hire this person?
That's correct. We followed our normal hiring procedures, a two-step process in this case. The individual does now have her master's, has sufficient experience, and does now qualify for the permanent social worker position.
Well,
So, yes, we followed all normal protocols.
I'm talking about the community resource liaison position. Was that posted?
Yes, the positions were advertised.
Okay, and you can send me a copy of those postings as well. I'd appreciate that. I will tell you this, council, I am very uncomfortable with the fact that one employee of the city can create a job with wages, hours, and working conditions, attach that job, and completely bypass, I guess I can't say completely bypass, but we didn't have to vote on it. We have to vote on every position in this city through our budget ordinance. And if we do something beyond the budget ordinance, there's usually an MOU attached to that comes before city council, and we vote on it. In this particular case, we had one particular person, a job was created, wages, hours, and working conditions were attached to it. We didn't have to vote on it. And I find that highly bothersome. And I don't think that any one individual should have that power. I don't care where they sit in this organization. That's city council's job. So please provide me with the information I asked for. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right, anyone else?
Mayor Taylor.
Mrs. Swask?
Thank you. I got a call today from a reporter asking about our lift assist policy ordinance and how that's going, because she had a complaint from one of our residents, and she was just following up on that. So I just want to I wanted to provide some information both to the residents and also get some information to have probably Mr. Koszybski or Mr. Vanderpool offer some clarifications. So what had happened was that this resident was living as an independent living resident, according to what this person who called me, the reporter, had the information for. But they live in a facility. Now, facilities are a community living area. Resident lives in an apartment, but has contracted certain amenities. So when that happens, and you're living independently, but you have contracted certain amenities from a facility, you are no longer considered by that facility as independent living. You're you're under their umbrella. If it's transportation, if it's food services, if it is any type of nursing care or medication assistance, you are then partly assisted living. And so they are supposed to be providing you with some care. What we are doing when we charge, so they had a fall. This person had a fall. And instead of calling 911, which they should do if they're independent living, like if you live in your own house, you're going to call 911. If you live in your own apartment, you're going to call 911. This person called the facility and asked for help getting up. The facility didn't help them, even though they're charging the person for care. They called Sterling Heights. Sterling Heights came because we will always come. We will always, always, always come and help somebody. We will never say no. So we came, we helped them up, but this particular facility apparently uses our services very, very, very frequently for non-emergent services, and they were charged a lift assist fee. They charged the resident $800, which certainly is not what we would charge even for an emergent run, but they charged, and that's not, we charged the facility either, but the facility charged the patient $800. So what I am, and I asked this reporter if they could please provide me, she did not provide me the name of the facility. I said, what I would like to do is start to find out who these facilities are, because this is not the intent of our ordinance at all. The intent of our ordinance was to prevent the inappropriate use of our emergency facilities when we could be better. The emergent facilities should be used for emergencies when those facilities are charging residents to provide the care, but they're not. They're using our emergency EMS facilities as their own personnel to help care for for taking care of the people that they're charging to take care of them, to the tune of anywhere between $5,000 to $10,000 a month. So what I am asking Mr. Koszybski, from the chair to Mr. Koszybski, is do we have anything in place yet to go after these facilities who are using predatory charges to their residents based on our ordinance? Do we have anything that we can do yet, or can we start looking into something or put something in place?
Mr. Koszybski.
Thank you, Councilwoman Sarowski. We have been looking into ways to fine tune the ordinance to put a little more teeth into it for purposes of the facilities. But these facilities, what they're doing is they are using our emergency services, even though they are charging residents and advertising to residents that they have those services on site. Somebody who slips and falls but isn't injured they're not having their staff lift these people back up or help them. So they're calling 911 services and having us, our fire department, our men go out there, and women go out there to lift these individuals up instead of being on the road in case of an emergency, like a heart attack or something of that nature. And this is the whole point of the ordinance, is to stop that, is to have these facilities either man or have the proper staffing there so they can lift or purchase a machine that helps them lift. But they're not doing that. And there's only a few offenders now. Most of them have come into compliance, and this may be one of them. And we're working on that.
Okay, is there, and I'm not sure I know from my end, all these facilities are licensed to some extent. Well, I shouldn't say all. Some of them are licensed to some extent. Is there a possibility of us going to, at the state level?
So the problem that we have is the state has sort of deregulated when it comes down to this.
To assisted livings, yes.
To assisted
Not
living.
skilled, but
So what has happened is they're skirting the licensing by offering these services through third-party contracts.
Correct.
As
Okay.
opposed to having it on site for themselves.
Right, like a
And-
concierge service that they
Correct.
contract them in.
So that has been the problem. So our ordinance targets those that are advertising these types of services being available, that are allowing, and are, in our opinion, and it's just our opinion, we don't believe that it's appropriate for them to be doing so. And in doing so, that is causing a lot of this problem. So we have been working to try to correct that through the ordinance, and now we're looking into trying to figure out another way to put a little more teeth in that ordinance.
Okay, very good. Okay, well, thank you very much. So my best advice to the residents, if anyone has found out that either your relative or you are the victim of your facility being charged by that facility for a lift that you needed to have done or your relative has had done, please contact us, either one of the council people, I'm kind of volunteering them, but you can certainly contact me, and my phone number is 586-212-7385. 586-212-7385. I look forward to hearing from you because we do want this to stop. This was the point of our ordinance, is to prevent predatory use of our services, but now I certainly don't want them to be billing you for that. That is not what should be happening. I'm not sure if it's quite illegal. It certainly is unethical, and we want it to stop. So we will do our very best to make sure that that is taken care of. And that's pretty much all I have, other than say Happy New Year, everybody. And it's 2024, it's an even year, and I have a thing about even years, so it should be a better year. So thank you very much, Mayor Taylor.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Sarowski. Mr. Radke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly, I wanted to kind of circle back to what Councilman Yanas was speaking about, because I kind of think it might have left the wrong impression to the people at home. It was my understanding through our packet, which I read, and I remember seeing this in the packet, that our current social worker, we've had trouble recruiting social workers through the chair to Mr. Vanderpool, correct? We've had some trouble advertising this position and hiring for this position, correct?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, Councilman Radke, that's correct.
Yeah. It was my understanding that we temporarily, she was in school to finish her master's for social work, and we didn't want a credible candidate to slip through our fingers. So we temporarily created this position, or I guess the administration temporarily created this position to get her on the payroll so that we would not lose her to a competitor. Is that my understanding correct, Mr. Vanderpool?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilman Radke, that is mostly correct. Let me just clarify if you'll allow me. First of all, City Council did, it was unanimously approved, voted on creating the 2 social worker positions. So that's in the budget. There was no position created that is not in the budget. The LOU process gives us the opportunity to sometimes bring employees in at a higher scale or perhaps tweak the position some to prepare it for the actual position budgeted. So in this case, the social worker that we recruited through our normal process had not completed her master's degree until she needed about 60 days to complete her coursework and get her degree. Once that was confirmed, she then was promoted to the social worker position, which is the permanent position. So there wasn't a position created separately. It was an entry-level LOU, if you will, preparing the person for getting her ready to enter into the social worker position, which I might add, the person we hired has a significant amount of social worker experience. In fact, more experience than the previous social worker we had. So this was a nuance that we overcame through an LOU that allowed us to hire what we believe is a very good, qualified social worker. So in conclusion, we have 2 social workers, they're full-time, and they are budgeted.
And we've hired the second one also?
Yes, we have.
Tremendous. I know that we were looking for quite some time, so I'm glad that we have that. And I appreciate you clarifying that, because I personally don't have a problem with how it went forward, because I want to make sure we're getting the high-quality employees that our residents want. On another topic, in our packets this week, I sent out an article from ProPublica and the New York Times on body camera use in various police departments across the state. I would urge all my colleagues to read the article. The one point that I thought was very interesting and something we might consider here in Sterling Heights was some departments have hired a position of auditor in their department to randomly go through body camera footage of officers to make sure that policy is being followed and that they are doing what we all expect them to be doing. This came into a really stark relief in Minnesota. This hasn't happened here. I don't think we have any problems, but I'm all about being proactive rather than reactive. In Minneapolis, they realized that if they had an auditor on staff, they would have realized that some of their officers were not following policy, were actually violating the law and the rights of their citizens by just checking the body cam footage. Now, I don't think that's happening here in Sterling Heights, but other departments, including New Orleans, I want to say Memphis and other ones, have hired auditors to go through this, to kind of proactively look through their footage. I'm not saying we should do it, but I just wanted to bring it up to the council so that you could consider it and look at it and maybe give me your thoughts at a later date about what you think about it, because I think it's just one more way that we can make sure all the checks and balances are being followed. I have no reason to think otherwise, but that's why you do these types of things. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor, and I guess to the people at home, Happy New Year.
All right, thank you, Mr. Radke. Council, anyone else?
Mayor Taylor, thank you. You know, I'm going to bring up the last meeting that we had also, and for maybe different reasons. But I guess what I would ask is, what does public safety mean to you? Because we campaign on it. We hire police. We hire firefighters. DPW are fixing our roads. So what does public safety mean beyond that? We certainly used public safety when it came to the pandemic, where we tried to keep everybody healthy. So we followed the rules that were set forth for us. We make sure that we have ample representation of police at our crowds so that we can keep people safe when they come to any event that we have. So what does that mean? At our last meeting, I tried to explain the situation at 15 and Shaner after witnessing it for over 40 years. And I want to explain in the last 3 weeks what's happened. Christmas Eve, we can all remember, was very foggy because Rudolph had to guide Santa's sleigh that night. But about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I was getting ready to leave my house, and all of a sudden we heard a horrific accident. Not only did I hear it because Shaner's the side of my house, 5 doors down, my neighbors heard it, so that we were all out in the street trying to help a gentleman who was hit by a car supposedly going between 80 and 90 miles an hour, rear-ended him to the point that all of the Christmas presents he had been hiding in his trunk were now all over Shaner. There happened to be a gaming device that was obliterated. He had Legos, and a lot of Legos, let me tell you. Brand new shoes and boxes. The shoes were everywhere. The boxes were shredded. It's Christmas Eve. And can you imagine? He was lucky that he was transported to the hospital with just his shoulder hurting him, but it could have been a lot worse. So I understand that the person that was responsible was given a ticket for reckless driving, but only because there were people there that witnessed the accident from start to finish, that made it a point to stay there, even though they had places to be, to make sure that they were witnesses to this accident to help this gentleman. So that's one, that's Christmas Eve. I'm in Florida for the holiday, and I start getting calls from an accident that happened at Brome, which is 15 and maybe not quite a half in Shaner, where there's somebody that ended up in critical condition. I don't know the circumstances behind that accident, but on the same day, there was another accident at 15 and Shaner. If I go back to the accident that happened at Brome, there's a court that's just south of that is Harborview Court. There's privacy, each residence has a privacy fence that abuts Shaner. In the last 2 years, there have been cars that have gone through those fences. So their fences have been replaced with brand-new fences at each home. The house across the street from me has 2 holes in their fence from the debris from the traffic accident that happened on Christmas Eve. So it's not an exaggeration when I tell you that we have a problem on Shaner. And I really think that we need to first, we have to have some kind of traffic study that goes on there. I'm going to tell you, since they fixed the road, it has become a speedway. And when I brought this up before, as between the speeding and the sound of these cars, I was told that, the manufacturers are putting out these faster and noisier cars, so what are we going to do about it? I'm not sure what we're going to do about it, but I think we should be doing something about it. And if it needs to be patrolled more, then that's what needs to happen. But there's got to be a solution to this problem, because it's getting to be way too dangerous. And the 3 accidents within less than a week, I just think, although we might not have been able to prevent it, but there's got to be something that we can do to make this area safer. Not only that did I observe what was going on, this disrespect for some of the people to our police and fire when they arrived on the scene was inexcusable. When the driver of the car that was at fault was approached by a police officer, it was like, why are you doing this to me? I don't have to go with you. And I'm thinking to myself, it's standard procedure that if you're involved in an accident, you need to be in a patrol car giving your side of the story. So that was one thing. Then the fire department comes there and is trying to give people attention and making sure that they're physically okay. And what they had to do in order to get people to sit back and actually be examined, maybe not transported, was another issue. All right, then let's talk about we'll talk about Utica Van Dyke Towing coming there to get the 2 cars. The disrespect from the drivers going by because the debris was across 5 lanes of traffic, and they were trying to get as much as they could to the east side of the street, as people were yelling at them to get out of the street and they were causing a problem, was ridiculous. And then this morning, DPW was still getting Legos out of the grass because we probably would have had Lego plants, because that's how much was there. I mean, it was like confetti over the street. But something's got to happen, something's got to change, because this is unacceptable. And I said this the last time we were here at our meeting, and I haven't changed my mind that we have to look at our master plan, because we are giving developers the opinion that they can put different buildings or strip malls or whatever in places where they just don't belong, because the traffic there is not going to be able to handle it. And if that's our problem, then we need to fix it. So I really want to see what we do there in some of these entitlement zones or whatever we're calling them. I think I have there. And then, because I really think the meeting on the 18th of January is so important, and because Mrs. Riska is by far one of the best clerks you're going to find in the entire country, not just in the state. I want to give her the opportunity to give us any kind of advice that she might have to make that a successful meeting for our residents, because I feel our elections are so important. And although we can't, we're not responsible for some of them across the country, we are responsible for them here, and we know that we do a good job, and we want everybody to follow our example. So through the chair to Mrs. Riska, if she'd like to comment.
Ms. Riska, and in your response, please indicate whether you think President Trump should be on the ballot. Go ahead.
No.
There's not a chance you're going to get me to. Thank you, everyone here and the rest of council. So we are excited to announce the Let's Vote Sterling Heights Community Forum on January 18th at 6 p.m. at the Community Center in Community Room 1. Anybody who's interested in going can visit our website, sterlingheights.gov/vote. But that session is really to inform voters. We're doing a huge voter outreach over the course of the next, 6 or so months, really going all the way into the presidential election. Our presidential primary is February 27th. In 2022, voters approved what we call Prop 2, and that was some sweeping election changes that changed our constitution. So these were constitutional amendments. Voters now have a number of different methods of voting, whether it be early voting, permanent ballot, absentee voting, and also, remaining election day voting. But there's so many different changes, and we just wanted to be able to educate our voters and allow voters who have questions to come and ask us questions, and we'll have the answers for you. So rather than, depend on going on Facebook or other social media, come to our community forum and get all of your questions answered, with the exception of, should a certain individual be on a ballot. So we're excited. Please, go to our website, sterlingheights.gov/vote, to register for that event. And then if you have any questions, you can always email us at vote@sterling-heights.net. Thank you.
Ms. Zarko?
I'm finished.
That's
Oh,
it?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Thank you very much.
That's okay.
No, I'm finished. I think I said enough.
All right, Councilor, Mrs. Koski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple comments here. The PUD was mentioned again this evening by Mr. Yanis. What I recall, the PUD years ago was used only in special circumstances. So I agree with him. I think we should take another look at that and maybe put some restrictions on when we would use it only as a special tool, not what developers should go to first. The other item is landfills. I recall that there was a developer that was going to put I want to call it a Section 8 because I can't remember exactly what it was, pilot program, kind of an apartment complex at 14 Mile and Red Run. And I was wondering if we ever received any results from the testing that was done on that property. Why didn't he proceed with the project? Was it because he changed his mind, or was it because of the landfill issues on that parcel? Because if I remember correctly, that strip of land goes north and literally almost ends at Baumgartner Park. And I was just wondering what the city knows about the landfills in that area. And do we keep records on any of the properties that landfill testing has been done on it? Is that information that is available to the public, or is that private information that the developers keep to themselves and don't share? If city manager could let us know what the procedure is there, then possibly if we can make that information available to future developers, it might save a lot of problems and time. Those were my two comments for this evening, other than I would like to ask the city manager to maybe in our weekly briefs give us a little update on things that you're doing out of the ordinary, administrative-wise, to keep us updated as to what you are doing to help make this city such a great city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Koski. Mrs. Schmidt.
I'll be brief. Happy New Year, everybody. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, Happy New Year to everyone. On the issue of, Look, a couple things, I think council made a lot of great comments tonight. On the issue of the lift assist, I just don't think that there's any way that we're going to get around the facilities passing this cost on to the residents. You know, that is what happens when governments regulate and assess a fee or a tax or something, it ultimately gets passed on to the end user. And in the case of these independent living facilities, the end user is the residents there. I just think that they should do a better job of explaining to their residents what they are, because these are not even licensed facilities. These are facilities that really, to me, are straddling the fence, trying to appear that they're assisted living facilities, but not necessarily charging assisted living facility rates. But they are offering some services and amenities. And the reality is, I think that is the cost, is $800. That's the cost. That's what we charged them. And I mean, it sounds like they just passed on the entire cost to the resident. It would make a lot more sense for these facilities to budget this into their annual operating expenses, and then rather than hitting the individual residents who need this service with an $800 bill out of the blue, build it into their monthly rent. And if they're paying $3,000 or $4,000 a month in rent, and the rent goes from like $3,470 to $3,495, I mean, I think that that's pretty manageable for most folks, even people living on fixed income. So that's what I think they should do. We should continue to have the conversation with them and figure out why they're not doing that in the first place. But it is truly unfortunate that these residents are getting stuck with this bill. But, you know, it's, to me, I'm still supportive of the ordinance, and I think that if we need to make tweaks, we'll look at it, but really, I'm not sure that there's any great solution there. Look, a couple things I want to say. I appreciate Mrs. Zarko, the comments about public safety and about the traffic there. Certainly, I'm not going to dispute your firsthand experience with what's going on at 15 Mile and Shaner. The only thing I would like to point out is, with regard to the development that was proposed at 15 Mile and Shaner that was voted on at the last council meeting, the reason it was brought before us for a vote is because it was a PUD, a planned unit development, that had a mixed-use component, so of approximately 15 or so acres. They were going to develop about 40% of it, if my memory serves me correctly, leaving the other 60% as green space. And on that portion that they were going to develop about 64 apartment units, which would have been way less density than we've seen in many recent apartment complex developments. The density and the green space and the recreational space all would have been well within the ordinance. And in fact, the type of variances that they were asking for were very, very minimal. It's super minimal. Like a couple of feet, you know, variance for two buildings to be next to each other. And the reason I bring this up is because that developer has signaled that, fine, we'll just go forward with the commercial development then, which they can do. They can develop that as a commercial shopping center by right, which means they're going to get their curb cuts on 15 Mile Road, which means they're going to be able, we can't control what uses are put in there. So they can put in whatever, you know, uses they want within that zoning district, and there might be undesirable uses. You know, there could be smoke shops, there could be adult novelty shops. What can we do to stop them? Nothing. And we've heard from developers and traffic experts in the past, and this is all information that you can easily find online. If they develop it commercially only, the traffic is going to be greater than if a large percentage of that property is developed as residential. So I don't disagree with anything you're saying, Mrs. Zarko, but if the goal is to have less traffic, have a more calming effect there, this is not going to be a good result. If the developer goes forward as he's signaled he's going to do and said, okay, fine, you don't want the 64 luxury apartment units, you don't want me to clean up the landfill, you don't want me to remediate the environmental issues there, I'll just put a strip center there. And it appears that's what we're going to get. So we're going to get the worst of all worlds there, probably going to have more traffic, probably going to have uses that we don't really want, and all for what? I don't really know. So it's frustrating to me, and certainly I was frustrated, and I'll continue to be, because I don't think we need to just scrap PUDs I think the reality is here, we're in a mostly built-out, mostly developed city. So when you've got hundreds and thousands of acres of virgin land like rural communities do in northern Macomb County and beyond, you know, you can come in and you can develop it as of right usually, and if you need to make some minor tweaks, it's not that big of a deal. But we've talked a lot over the last several years about unique developments, welcoming developments, distinctive developments, mixed-use developments. And then when we have one, it's like, well, we saw what happened. So I don't think the PUD ordinance needs to be scrapped. And I don't think that we necessarily need to get with the Planning Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals again. Ultimately, I think we as a city council need to decide what is it that we want to do. Because there's, in my opinion, there's mixed signals being sent out, that we're talking about density, we're talking about these mixed-use nodes, we're talking about becoming less reliant on the automobile and more pedestrian-friendly. So I just think that if that's not what we want, then we need to make it clear to the development community that this is not what we want. So those are my feelings on it. We are going to adjourn into closed session. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn into closed session.
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Ms. Riska, can we have a roll call vote?
Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Yanes?
Yes.
Ms. Zarko?
Yes.
Mrs. Kosky?
Yes.
Mr. Radke?
Yes.
Mrs. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Grasky?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 7-0. We will adjourn the meeting into closed session. We will not be returning. So this is it for us tonight. Thank you for coming out. Happy New Year, everyone.